All right, everyone, it is clank time, and the infant is not in the house, so I don't have to do my Bob Ross ripoff voice. Good time had by all. We're live on YouTube, but we'll make sure that that's actually the case over on Rumble as well, just to be clear. I see nothing in Rumble rants. That may not be a good sign. Let's make sure and reload the page. Gimme. Show me the money. Yes, indeed, we're live there. I ain't seeing any Rumble rants. All the Rumble clankers, you've got to step up. It's clank time. Yes, literally clank. Yes, I have coffee on my third cup of the day, of course. I've given up energy drinks, although I do have an army of energy drinks right in front of the keyboard, and I'll tell you why. The cat is reprehensible. She woke the baby up earlier, actually, again, by jumping up here and jiggling my sword around. There's literally nothing to be done at this point about it. But she tries to park herself between the keyboard and the screen, taking up a large area of visualization there that I need in order to do what I'm doing. And so I have a bunch of energy drinks there, and, she can't lay there if there's a bunch of energy drinks in her way. And also, the coffee runs out. Colombia has a coffee shortage, and you can't obtain it. At least I still have caffeine, so it's all good. And it's sugar-free. Although the coffee gets me going, I think, more than the energy drinks do. I sort of forgot about that because it's more convenient. You wake up in the morning, you're already tired. Which one's easier? Brewing the coffee, 5 minutes later, you've got your caffeine, although it is superior in flavor and quality. Or you grab a can, you open it up, and you start chugging it. There are definitely there are advantages to energy drinks, I will say. We've got big news today. We'll be talking about the Twitter files, the 7th release. That's the big one. The big one being astroturfed is important is J6. We'll talk about that, but mainly from the frame of it being irrelevant and a foregone conclusion and being astroturfed by the legacy media, which clearly it is. Talk about El Paso Airport. They've been enriched. There's more diversity in El Paso right now than there has been for a fortnight. So we'll be talking about all of these things and much, much more. And of course, paying attention to any super chats that come through. You can pay me to read your chats. I mainly started doing that not for the extra money, but just because there's so many fucking chats, even on slow mode, I couldn't keep up with them all. I see Ring by Dr. Dirty Deeds going on over on Rumble. There's plenty of good shit to talk about. We will launch right into it. Twitter Files, Part 7. This one going through Michael Schellenberger. Now, of course, I think Barry Weiss has been shit-canned as far as the releases, so I think it's Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger mainly now. Possibly others. The FBI and the Hunter Biden laptop. How the FBI and intelligence community discredited factual information about Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings both after and before the New York Post revealed the contents of the laptop on October 14th, 2020. Long story short, I'll give you the quick run-up with a few footnotes here for you if you don't feel like listening to 10 minutes of me talking about the entire thing and repeating it verbatim. You can go through it. Links in the description, by the way, on both platforms, YouTube and Rumble. You can and should read through it yourself when you get a spare moment. I know some people, this is your morning show. You have to go to work. When you get back, plunk yourself down and take 10, 15 minutes. That's about the reading length of this. It's tweets. They're short. They're a few sentences long. They're pithy. Be more aware than the people that you are trying to debate, even if they will have cognitive dissonance and won't listen to a word you're fucking goddamn saying. I suffer this on a daily basis. Anyway, long story short, point number 1. The FBI knew that Hunter Biden's laptop existed because they literally subpoenaed it and seized the device. Number 2, they presumptively, they immediately went through it forensically, and they realized that a copy had been made of the actual content of the laptop. And then they put 2 and 2 together and said, okay, this is probably going to end up in the hands of the Trump campaign or somebody else that's going to leak this material. At that particular time, which is sometime before the New York Times story, they probably didn't know that that was going to happen. They suspected that it was going to happen. Because they clearly wanted Joe Biden to be elected, they decided to sit on that information. And then they did, point number 3, something rather astonishing. In part using taxpayer money explicitly, paying over $3 million to Twitter staff to do the hard work of blocking smaller accounts that were talking about this. Basically a form of taxpayer-funded bribe by a supposedly unbiased government bureau. They promoted the concept. And this is before the material was released. Keep that in mind. That's important. They knew Giuliani had it. They decided to talk to Twitter and explicitly claim that the material was the result of hacking and that it was part of a Russian disinfo campaign. Now, they knew this wasn't the case. They knew this for several reasons. Number one, they had the physical device. They knew who had presumptively obtained copies of it. They had legitimately no reason to believe that some random laptop shop owner is going to give the material to Boris and Ivanka over there. So they probably figured, well, if there's any political axe to grind, it's probably going to Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani, Steve Bannon, somebody like that, maybe Don Jr. They probably have this info. Well, shit, that's a problem because we looked through the Hunter Biden laptop thing and we found pictures there of Hunter Biden and his daddy meeting with people that his daddy claimed that he never met with. If the American people become aware of this, the election can't possibly plausibly be denied Donald Trump. We've seen polling in the wake of this showing something like 5 to 6% of people that voted for Biden would have stayed home or voted for Donald Trump. It would have been a blowout. It would have been a mass. It would have been way bigger than Hillary Clinton's email server. It would have been much more beefy than that. They would have voted for Trump overwhelmingly. It wouldn't have even been close. He would have won the popular vote by several million. None of the states that were in play could have plausibly gone in the other direction. It would have been a landslide victory. It would have been bigger than the 2016 margin of victory, actually, if you look at repeated polling thereafter of the American public. The FBI knew that the material had not been hacked. It was left there at the laptop shop. They would have seen the receipts. They had the device. They had the testimony of the individual running the shop. They knew that it had been forfeited as a device. They knew that the material was real. They knew that if it was leaked at all, it was because it was legally obtained. It shows malfeasance by Biden. It shows emails that they also attempted to discredit, even though the end recipients of those emails have repeatedly confirmed, yeah, indeed, they are actually real. Yeah, I got this email from Hunter Biden discussing Parmesan in the carpet. Yeah, I can verify that here. It's literally in my inbox. Well, I mean, if those are real, and the pictures are real, and everything else that's been looked into is real, why would you believe that that some random claim of the big guy holding 10% wasn't real and was part of a disinfo campaign? The other part, and just as damning, remember, the FBI was made acutely aware before this happened that the old Russian disinfo claim, Russian election interference in 2016 thing was also false. They had no legitimate underlying basis to claim to anyone, whether it be Twitter or Facebook, that a Russian disinformation campaign was involved here. They had no reason to believe that because the former claim of a Russian disinfo or election interference campaign was entirely debunked. That is the Steele dossier, which was in part compiled at the whim of the Clinton campaign. They've used that as a springboard now for more than half a decade to try to stymie people from speaking freely. And that's point number 4, which is the FBI, again, a supposedly non-biased federal bureau, utilized taxpayer money and spent its time attempting to police speech that was lawful and it was accurate. It was not disinfo. It was not illegal. It doesn't actually run afoul of the hacked materials policy on Twitter, Facebook, or anywhere else. And they ran with it anyway in order to interfere in the 2020 election. That's the long story short. So there, I've summed it up. You can go through it yourself, though. I mean, some of it's outright dim. I mean, you can get fucking paperwork. The story begins in December 2019 when a Delaware computer store owner named John Paul, J.P. MacIsaac, contacts the FBI about a laptop that Hunter Biden had left with him. On December 9th, 2019, the FBI issues a subpoena for and takes Hunter Biden's laptop. So that was rather quick now, wasn't it? It didn't take them long to get the subpoena fully signed by a court now, did it? Clearly, they were interested in the material. Unfortunately, it had already been copied and sent in to other individuals, which is exactly what the FBI would have realized when they did a forensic analysis. They would have looked and they would have looked at the metadata on that computer and said, well, it was accessed after the period when Hunter was using it. You know, you have this year-long period where nobody's accessing it because it's just sitting there. Then it's accessed again and somebody copied all of the material. Whoops. Yeah, oh shit, the crackhead done fucked it up again. We've got a cover for Big Joe Biden because Orange Man bad. Orange Man, threat to democracy, et cetera, et cetera. By August 2020, Mac Isaac still had not heard back from the FBI, even though he had discovered evidence of criminal activity. So he emails Rudy Giuliani, who was under FBI surveillance at the time. And this is the other and final damning point. The FBI became aware of the fact that Giuliani managed to gain access to this material because they were spying on him as part of a criminal probe. And then they decided to act. This is clearly an intrusion into democracy. It's clearly unconstitutional at this point. This is our triple doozy. This elaborates upon the FBI's former involvement that we already knew of, to be clear. Hunter Wadley. Good morning, Sticks. My Twitter is blowing up about the CIA killing Kennedy. Was anything unsealed? What's the skinny? Yes, the FBI presumptively had Kennedy assassinated, and for some reason, nobody is mentioning this. It goes further, though. The CIA did not one day decide, hey, Kennedy's a danger. We're going to have him killed. By the way, RFK, not mentioned in this particular proceeding. You will note that. The real truth is that the communists, after the Cuban Missile Crisis, decided they both needed to go. The Kennedys were too dangerous. The whole goal of mutually assured destruction by that time between the U.S. and the Soviets was to buff up their own internal authoritarianism, using the other guy bad as the justification for that. It allowed the United States and its allies, the Soviets and the Warsaw countries, etc., to build more weapons, to do more aircraft design, to have limitless budgets and limitless latitude to do whatever they wanted. More low-key in the U.S. with the G-men than in the Eastern European countries or the Soviet Union with the KGB, etc., in order to exert more authority over the population, to socially engineer things. And they said, well, Kennedy almost actually led to a nuclear war. We don't actually want that. We want the looming specter of nuclear war. Kill him. Otherwise, we're going to expose what happened for real, and the American people will turn against the government. So the CIA said, well, we either kill off Kennedy, like the Soviets want, and we want him dead too because he wants to downsize us. So, we sort of take out two birds with one stone. Or the Soviets are going to fuck us in the ass. Well, sorry, JFK, bye. There's a reason why the Secret Service was commanded to stand down and not ride the tail fins that day. I'll just put it that way. We've got multiple shots of that happening, by the way. LBJ was presumptively involved. He got a little bit of a career advancement when that happened. Just saying. Mick Spenskar. Guten Morgen, mein Krankenführer. Scarfy the Strange. Hey, Sticks, can I get a shout out? Just released some vids on Lovecraftian monsters in AI art on YouTube, Minds, and Odyssey. Okay, we have Scarfy the Strange doing some Lovecraftian monstrosities. The Grizzly. If our democracy continues going down this route, it will be a Tim Pool. I don't want it to be cooler heads should prevail, but if 50% of our population can't trust the election, our democracy will fall apart. Yeah, it's definitely hanging by the edge. My strong suggestion is to work on self-improvement at this time. Lose 10 pounds, gain a little more muscle, build a new skill. You might need it because shit could hit the fan at any time, but you should be doing that anyway. Hell, we do have the specter of looming nuclear war. This time it might actually be accurate. We could have a real pandemic, wipe out 10% of the world's population. We could have a Carrington event-style impact, solar flare, and it could knock out a bunch of electronics, reducing us back to pre-90s technology for years at a time. There are all sorts of great things that can happen to go wrong. It could be something personal to you. Your house burns down. You didn't have fire insurance. It's always good to have a couple of extra skills. So yeah, the Twitter threads part 7 is out. I mistakenly thought the other day's release was number 7. It was the supplemental. That was a supplemental to part 6. It wasn't made entirely clear, so I didn't know if there would be any further Twitter files releases. Let's see. We've got Isu Josh and Rumble. Kennedy was killed by Sonny Franzese. Michael Franzese has confirmed this many times. Could be a patsy. Oswald claimed to be one. And Saran, if you think that he actually was the trigger man in the RFK killing, members of the Kennedy family are definitely, they're not entirely sold on that possibility. I wonder if there's a reason for this. Awfully convenient. So is the timing. Next news story. CNN panel stunned. Keep in mind the linguistic usage. By January 6th committee's absolutely historic criminal referral against Trump. Very bad day for his legacy. How many buzz terms can you fit into a goddamn Mediaite article, by the way? When you see the legacy media using the same terminology near universally, in this case, historic, historical, absolutely historic. For something, when you see them hyperbolically running around with their dicks in one another's ass, amping people up and being hyperbolic about a story, you can be sure that the story is something that's not actually that credible. It's not actually that important. It's when they ignore a story that you know that it's important. So, like the Twitter files. And when they come out and they openly proclaim that the story is a nothing burger, when they openly proclaim that you shouldn't bother to look into it because people agree that it's boring. We looked into it and we didn't find anything. Like some of the Twitter files and many other stories, Panama Papers or Michael Hastings' death, then you know that it's real primo shit. Then you know that it's juicy. The legacy media ignores it because the juicy stuff tends to countermand the globalist bottom line that they're privy to. Meanwhile, something like this is massively hyped up. Let me talk about the J6 committee really quickly, because really it ends with a thud. Liz Cheney's out of a job. Kinzinger's out of a job. A couple of the Democrats there aren't seeking re-election either. The committee falls apart when the new Congress is sworn in. It's literally a nothing burger because it no longer even physically exists. The J6 committee was always going to refer charges. Everyone has known this from day one. It would have been strange if they hadn't, considering the composition, number one, of the committee being hyper-partisan, the two Republicans there being effectively nothing more than rhinos, Liz Cheney losing by 40 points. I think it was the third largest historical loss by an incumbent U.S. House history, but we'll get past that. The J6 committee was foregone. It was a foregone conclusion that they were going to do this, and I'll tell you why. Because these people already voted to hold Trump under charge of insurrection fomenting years ago. They already did that. So if they came out with their committee and said, well, yeah, we were wrong to impeach him that second time around. Actually, we found that he didn't do any insurrection fomenting. Wouldn't that be a stark admission of malfeasance? Of course they were going to find him guilty of that. But they can't make charges. They can only refer them to the DOJ. And here's what I think happens now. There are two possibilities. One considerably more likely than the other. The unlikely possibility is that they do a show trial sort of thing. So you'll see what happened with Giuliani, where the CNN truck just magically happens to be there before the FBI raid on his offices and stuff. And they'll drag Trump out and he'll be disheveled. They'll do it at a time where he hasn't showered yet, of course. And they'll drag him out, effectively kicking and screaming, and they'll make a big show of it. And there'll be goddamn parades and fireworks and all sorts of other shit. And it'll be all anyone fixates on. And they'll make it a show. It'll be a monkey trial, basically. That's not likely. It would bring our republic to the very brink of civil war, to be clear. The second and much more likely possibility is that this isn't about putting him in jail. It's not about doing that. If anything, at the last minute, Biden says, well, you know, we need to heal our republic. I'm a unifier. I'm pardoning him, or some stupid shit like that, knowing that the charges are based on false premises, knowing that even in DC, goddamn, even a half reasonable jury's not going to convict him of something like that because you've got so much countervailing evidence that wasn't admitted in the J6 committee itself. You will note that exculpatory evidence was repeatedly blocked from admission. So were witnesses that countermanded the concept of Trump whipping people up into a frenzy to go off and burn the Capitol down in order to install me as Pinochet 2.0. That never happened. There was no insurrection. There was no planned insurrection. Donald Trump did not tell people to be violent. These are lies. Upon an actual trial, because you wouldn't be able to block out the exculpatory witnesses and statements, etc., that would become very evident. Therefore, I hazard a guess they don't want to actually do that. Their real goal is to hold the possibility of prosecution over Trump's head during the GOP primaries in order to trigger a messy primary battle. Now, what happens from there, they don't give a goddamn. Either Trump wins anyway, but he's embattled, and he's still got these potential charges looming over his head, demoralizing GOP voters, giving them a cause to claim upon the general election that he subsequently loses. Well, Republicans didn't side with him. Republicans didn't consolidate behind Orange Man because Orange Man was facing potential trial for insurrection. And it rankled them. And so they decided to stay home, or they voted for Biden or Kamala or whatever. That's possibility number one. Or number two, he doesn't win the primaries. They trigger a messy primary battle. They dogpile him, which trust me, that's the first order priority. They want him not to even win the primaries, to get DeSantis in there. to get Mike Pence in there, to get Rubio in there, Chris Christie, it doesn't matter who. Whether they win or lose is also immaterial because most of these people are unipartyists. It doesn't matter whether they or the Democratic candidate win because they're controlled by the same powers that be. This is exactly what happened with like Jeb v. Hillary rhetoric. When people said no more Clintons, no more Bushes. Well, they meant it. But there are other non-dynastic uniparty members as well. To be clear, if the Republicans are cucked enough not to push back against this, once they have the House of Representatives and undercut the J6 committee's findings completely and demand Garlick step down because of his blatantly partisan nature, and they block Trump, I won't vote for the Republicans. I will be one of those people that stays home berating them day after day for being utter pathetic pussies. Just to be clear, not that it matters. Democrat wins, shit government. Uniparty Republican wins, shit government. It's like Obama v. Romney 2.0. Who cares who you vote for? They're the same thing. McCain v. Obama, Bush v. Gore, Bush v. Kerry, they're all the same fuckers. They're all exactly the same. You have to go back to first-term Ronald Reagan to find anything prior to Donald Trump in which a genuinely differentiated candidate existed. By his second term, he was half a mental vegetable and easily controlled by the corporate interests, and he was being led around like a puppy, which a lot of conservatives don't want to admit to. Well, the Gipper would never do that. He was selling Chesterfields and talking about, his attempt to pass sweeping gun control wasn't, it had nothing to do with him being controlled by unipartyists, just to be clear. Hunter Wadley, I was talking with a friend about the subject. I couldn't recall history to give a decent and accurate answer. Thanks, Sticks. You're welcome. Matt Jones, good morning, Sticks. Love the content and wish you a great day. So far, so good. It's warmer. The baby slept well last night. I'm well rested and well caffeinated. By the way, there was just a funny aside since, I've got some time to burn because I've only got 5 more news stories today. There was this statue out in front of one of the restaurants in the center of town, and it's like an anthropomorphic French fry container. And it's shoving a French fry into its mouth like it's eating its own brain. And its face is so fucked up. I thought about taking a picture of it because it looks like it ate too much sodium on the fries and had a stroke. I thought that was... people probably thought I was a little bit nuts. They thought I was walking to the hospital nut ward when I was on my way through or something like that, the care home, because I was laughing so hard. The Grizzly. I wonder how the populist side of things can win. I'm not blackpilling, to be clear, just looking for routes to victory. How do we convince a populace utterly submerged in total propaganda? 1 out of 2. And 2 out of 2. How do we get Steelworker Dad, who has 10 minutes free for lunch and only watches whatever cable propaganda box their lunchroom has on screen? How do we get to these people to see the lies and subterfuge all around them? Well, you can go the Pressler route and go harvest ballots. Knock on doors. Talk to people in person whenever you have the chance to do so. And don't stand down. Meanwhile, prepare for the worst and build a new skill up. Build a new skill, look for ways to reduce your output of money, etc. Build up a little nest egg if you can now, because Bidenomics might bring the world to its knees next year. Grantham, Sticks, just to be clear, Hexenhammer, here's 666. Happy holy days. Thank you for the $6.66. The Spence Fencer, I put on Twitter Files Part 7 12 hours after he overnights hard drive to Giuliani. The FBI and entire USA MSM freaks out. Russian misinfo is coming. Yes, that's the other part of it. If you look at the timeline, it looks mysteriously like the FBI tipped off its legacy media buddies. Do you think that's because Biden was directly colluding with them to put out news by that time? Only admitted to, of course, earlier this year. I think that we've nailed down the reason why the information that was supposedly classified moved so quickly. Isu Josh, no, Sonny was dating Marilyn Monroe and JFK didn't like it. That's why he was constantly sending the feds after him. That's why Sonny had him taken out. Had nothing to do with politics. I disagree, to be clear. Monroe was probably killed by the CIA also. Leon McNichol, Ukraine will be Al-Qaeda 2.0 in the future. We are arming the same kind of morons we did in Afghanistan to fight the Russians in the 80s, and it turned out so well. Well, I mean, to be clear, the Taliban and the Mujahideen did defeat the Soviets. I mean, we accomplished our goal. It's just at what cost? That was the whole problem. Meanwhile, they turned lemons into lemonade after 9/11. They're like, wow, yes, another terrorist attack. Thousands died. And remember this day, everyone. Let us pass the Patriot Act. Let us take more money and grind down your liberty more and become more like the Mujahideen, actually, in the process. I wrote a book, Nazis, Commies, and Terrorists, years and years ago that touches on that basic premise. Mikhail the Stray Cat, clank, clank, clank the spoon, caffeine till the end, Black Bill's done, clankdom come, and we shall take the win. Isu Josh, by the way, would love to see you on Michael Frenzy's channel. You and him would have a great interview. He sometimes does politics interviews. Yeah, I mean, he's just got to DM me on Twitter if he wants to, talk with me or something. Although with a baby around, it's harder to allocate time for interviews and debates and things like that. Like I've bounced more than half of them over the last year for that reason. Next news story, stranded immigrants sleep on the floor of El Paso airport in latest border rush. As of Wednesday morning, over 200 immigrants were stranded at the Texas airport as they awaited their connecting flights to Miami, according to KFOX 14. Several of the immigrants told the outlet they had been stranded for several days. Videos show immigrants sleeping in the hallways and the lines of the airport crowded along the walls. Many families were among those seen bundled up against the walls, including many children. Some immigrants told the outlet that they had bought tickets that were supposed to be an hour-long flight to Miami, but their flights kept getting changed. Yeah, it's wonderful. 48 to 72 hours, 5 days, one immigrant said. They also complained about the lack of help from the airport. I'll tell you this, the airport is not responsible for your care. The U.S. government has allowed you to illegally come into the country. They're responsible for your care. What's the Biden admin doing right now? Little kids get little space blankets, and so they look like little microwave burritos, which Biden finds hilarious in his deep-seated bigotry. And they sit in their kid cages, which Obama helped to make. That's number one. And then other people, families and lone adults, they have to camp out in a fucking airport, like they've got a red-eye flight and they're trying to take a 6-hour snooze. Yeah, blame shifting to the airport. The legacy media is really going to do that. They wouldn't even be there and wouldn't need that care if it weren't for Biden opening the southern border. Now you want Title 42 to go away. By the way, the SCOTUS just shot down that concept and put it on stay for a very short period of time, unfortunately, admittedly, in order to retain Title 42 for a few extra days while they attempt to continue to debate the point. Yeah, it'll be great. Let's just throw open the southern border. It's not like there's a problem there. I would point out something. Now, think what you will about disaster relief. As a libertarian, the idea of evening things out by dispensing huge amounts of inefficiently gathered taxpayer money can itself be very problematic. When there's a disaster, though, in the United States, typically federal and state money is freed up. So think Hurricane Irene in New England. That was a big one. A hurricane flatlines the coast in the Carolinas. A huge earthquake hits Washington state, levels several towns. A blizzard goes through the southern plains region, blankets everything in 3 feet of snow. Drought hits the Wyoming corn farmers. Iowa is too parched, or they have too much rain and the corn crop fails. The soybeans rot into the ground. Federal money is released. We declare it a disaster, and we try to make sure that those people can at least have a feasibility of rebuilding. What are you going to tell to the people in and near the southern border counties that are currently overrun with literally millions of migrants that aren't legally allowed to even be in the country? In non-sanctuary areas, by the way. What are you going to, are we going to give them federal disaster money? Because I would think that when you get to the point where hundreds of people are sleeping in your airport and keep getting bounced flight-wise, because the flight scheduling, I guess, just ain't there at this particular moment because Christmas is coming and people got to see their families. Wouldn't you consider that at least a crisis, if not a disaster? They've labeled the southern border situation a humanitarian crisis. Think of those poor huddled masses. We must do more to help them. If it's a crisis for them, how much more is it a crisis for all of the actual tax-paying U.S. citizens and residents within these areas? And Biden won't even visit the fucking goddamn border. Neither will Kamala, the border czar herself. Really problematic, my dude. Isu Josh, you know who Michael Franzese is, right? He's a former Italian mob boss who's now a motivational speaker. I actually hadn't heard of him. I'll have to look into that, though. I'm interested in the JFK assassination. Louis Bishop, hey Sticks, been watching since 2016. Just wanted to say thanks for all the great content, and I hope you and the family have an amazing Christmas. Just got Liz her main Christmas gift today, one of them. I think she'll like it. Miss Grimstock, I had AI write a haiku about you. In Styx's garden green, spoons clank, cat naps in the sun. Harmony reigns supreme. Nice. Thank you. Mr. Wonderful, a possible depression is touted by mid to late next year. Severe recession at the very least. This will bode well for Trump. Very well. Hence why they're trying to hold the referral over his head. They're not going to actually act on it. There's a 90% chance they don't act at all. And at the end minute, Biden will, with a flourish, he'll announce a pardon or something like that. Well, come on, man. At the end of the day, he's still the main candidate and stuff. I know he broke the law. He did terrible things, but I'm not going to prosecute him. We would look too partisan or something like that. Expecting Trump to kiss his hand or something. Yeah, trust me, that's almost certainly what's going to happen. Hunter Wadley, in case 22-380 on your radar. No, it's not actually. I see Josh. Would also love to see you review Michael Frenzy's book, Mafia Democracy. One of the best exposés on the government I have ever seen. Interesting. Next news story. SHIB threatens social media companies. If you will be responsible moderators of content, we will give you immunity. Now, first, let me say something about SHIB. Has anyone here ever watched the HBO series Deadwood from many years ago that was, by the way, canceled prematurely, and it's one of the greatest sins of all time within the on-demand sort of subgenre? There was one episode, I think it was in the first season, with Wild Bill Hickok, and some dudes pissed him off. And he starts talking about how his mouth looks like a cunt. Like when his mouth moves, it looks like a cunt to him. And you will run your cunting mouth to me, and the Wild Bill thing. Every time I see Adam Schiff speak, his mouth looks the same. It's sort of like he's the Democratic counterpart of Rick Scott. I always joked about how his mouth, he would always purse his lips really tightly, and he has those thin, overly pink, almost lipstick lips. And if you turn it 90 degrees, it looks like a vagina. You could probably Photoshop that if you wanted to get bulimia. Adam Schiff is the same way, and he's always licking his lips. It always looks like it's like you got a purty mouth, boy. You hear banjos. You say you went too far along this stream, and now there's banjo music playing in the background. The intelligence rating is basically the same. By the way, the banjo kid from Deliverance looks exactly like a little boy version of Joe Biden anyway. And the fact is that Schiff is coming out to try to force, he's aiding the FBI. He's afraid of free speech because he knows people criticize him and his ideas too much. So he comes out to say, well, if you would just do responsible moderation, then you can do whatever you want. That's the opposite of 230 and what it means. The concept of 230 is the opposite of what Schiff is claiming. The concept was that because the sites cannot physically moderate everything, as long as they're just focusing on illicit material, copyright infringement, illicit pornography, spams and scams, botting, they can do that. And the idea is that if they can't get to it right away and it takes 2 hours to remove the copyright infringement, that's okay, because there's no physical way that they can possibly moderate all the content for that material, which is illegal and against TOS legitimately. It's illegal content, illicit stuff and shit, terroristic threats and shit. The idea that instead these companies need to moderate disinfo, unkind opinions, hate speech, which has no full legal definition, is the exact opposite of what 230 was incepted to be. Yeah, Schiff is actually referring to being a publisher. You're going to police lawful speech. You're going to take time off of going after the criminal stuff that these sites have a terrible track record of speedily removing anyway, in order to focus on someone who told a joke 10 years ago, in order to focus on somebody who has, uttered something that somebody else found offensive. This is the exact opposite of what a legitimately incepted congressperson would be pushing for. If you believe in the First Amendment, and that certainly plays a role with the fucking Twitter files as well as what happened with Facebook several years ago, then you would not be pushing for this. You'd be pushing for the opposite. You shouldn't be moderating content. You should be focused on stuff involving kids, stuff involving trafficking, stuff involving drug sales, stuff involving terroristic threats, stuff involving non-speech like doxing or spam. That's what they should be focused on. That was their entire excuse for pushing 230 in the first place. We can't moderate everything. If you hold us legally accountable, we can't grow as sites. It's impossible. You've got 10 million hours of video uploaded in this week-long span. We've only got 10 people to moderate it. We can barely keep up. Okay, well then, focus on the illegal stuff. Problem solved. That's all you have to do. So Schiff shows his deep-seated reprehension for the concept of free expression. He is obsessed with this concept. Sultan S. Monster, you should do a live stream as Black Pete. Yes, Svarta Pete. I'm sure that I would not get the video removed. I don't know, if I make my millions or something like that, maybe I'll do an exclusive show and I'll call it the N-word show or something like that just to piss people off. Jay LaRosa, Trump's current chance to be Arnom, in your opinion? Still well over 50-50. Trump still has the lead. He slid in the last poll, but I don't know that it should have been aggregated at all. So he's still got the lead. He's got the money. He's got the name recognition. A lot of the potential opponents have already effectively stated that they will stand down if he runs, which he is. Rand Paul won't run. Ted Cruz won't run. Chris Christie and Liz Cheney and people like that are has-beens. They're not going to be able to do any damage. Basically, it comes down to DeSantis and Pence. That's basically what you're left with at the moment. Elon's ex. My hubby is 100% VA-disabled Iraq vet. Got denied to serve in Ukraine with those contract forces due to his physical disabilities. Watches you religiously. How to tell once great, strong Afrikaner. He's nuts. Afrikaner. Does he eat biltong? Biltong is good. Water buffalo jerky is excellent. I've tried it before. Really peppery. Really great. Drexkin, Morning Sticks. With all the revelations coming out of Twitter, puts a new light on all synchronized actions that multiple social media sites did. Yes. For example, the depersoning of several people off the internet entirely. Yes, that was coordinated. The FBI probably played a role in that too. The Grizzly, what are the chances of a magical, messy primary? That is becoming more likely as time goes on because a lot of people are lemmings. Next news story, intentional or coincidence? Far-left New York Times publishes crossword puzzle resembling Nazi swastika on the first day of Hanukkah. Okay, we're going to weigh in on this. Firstly, the fact that it vaguely kind of sort of resembles maybe a swastika. Okay, it's a geometric design. That's how crossword puzzles are made, number one. There are only certain numbers of ways that you can compile them when you're doing a crossword puzzle. At this point, they probably have AI generating them, but it's going to spit out a form. However, I do have two counterpoints. Number one, if a human looked at this, even if it's AI generated, they would probably pick up on the fact that it looks vaguely swastika-esque. I mean, it does. Again, link in the description. You can see it for yourself, their particular puzzle. Maybe I should do the crossword puzzle. I used to like those. I'm fairly good at it, too, because I have a good verbal command. Sometimes you get flummoxed by them and have some totally off-the-wall word. And proper nouns, don't even get me started on that because I know nothing about pop culture for the most part. Then Lil Nas X is a result. I can get that. Some fucking rock band from Sweden, circa 2018. I don't know fucking shit about them. They'll still be a result for some reason. They really stretch sometimes. So number one, they could have looked at it and said, okay, someone who's got blue hair would maybe interpret it that way. Secondly, it's the first day of Hanukkah. You could have picked maybe a better time to release this particular crossword puzzle. Maybe you generate another one, say, okay, we'll save this for January or something like that. You can understand why that would rankle some people, especially if they're looking for a reason to be rankled. And third and finally, if it weren't the New York Times, and this is why they're getting away with it, they say, well, we're sorry, it's insensitive, we didn't mean it. If this were Breitbart's crossword puzzle, or a Fox News crossword puzzle, or a Styx Hexenhammer crossword puzzle, PewDiePie decides to branch out and make fucking crossword puzzles, they would be goddamn dragged, depersoned, deplatformed, the image would be banned. You know it, I know it, the double standard is real. That's the problem here. I don't consider this to be problematic. I consider it to be amusing more than anything else. But a series of stars had to align for this to happen and to pass through human review. And again, shoe on a different foot, it would be ass-kicking time ideologically. So, yes, crossword puzzles have now been decided to be anti-Semitic, along with milk, cartoon frogs, Italian hand gestures, and many other things. Hunter Wadley, 22380 is Brunson v. Adams. It's on the docket for the Supreme Court. Check it out if interested. At first I thought you meant 22 versus 380, like the pistol calibers, actually. I didn't realize you were talking about a legal case. J.S. McDurdy, it's my 35th birthday today. Can I get clanked on? Yes, indeed, you can. Happy 35th. You're halfway to the grave, give or take a decade or so. Enjoy. I turned 35 actually in, 4 weeks, actually, on January 20th specifically. You're in good company age-wise. I don't know, being in your mid-30s is pretty great. Civic nationalism, 1776. Would an indictment of Trump actually cause a constitutional crisis? Yes. And how would that affect the national elections going forward? Assuming you get another election, because people would be so up in arms, I think you'd have some societal problems. Elon Zex, how to tell my hubby to settle down now. Afrikaner men are nuts for freedom. Made sure me and the boys didn't get the Koufax. I love him for that. Don't tell him to settle down. Don't ever try to get your husband to settle down. If he does, then that's a problem. Stay wild, everyone. Being mature is retarded. Mega Sea Monkey, good morning, Sticks. Here are some Biden bucks for the N-word show. Yeah, I mean, if I really have my break and I've got fuck you money at any point in the future, why the hell not? Do something that's deliberately as depraved as possible just to piss people off, but you do it like totally off-site, so there's nothing that they can do about it. Wouldn't that be funny? Get my own website, my own web hosting going. Get my own everything. And I wouldn't need any money, so I don't give a shit about payment processors or anything like that, so I'd be able to say exactly what I want. Not that I don't do that already, but imagine you do it while dressed as Varta Pete. People's heads would spin around 360. I'd be basically, I would call it the Ralph Northam show. Then they couldn't criticize me. Biden skewered for ridiculous tall tale about giving uncle a Purple Heart. Biggest serial liar elected. Yes, Biden claimed that he gave his uncle a Purple Heart. And this is, I'll just read through this briefly. Biden made the remarks during a town hall for U.S. veterans in Delaware on Friday. At one point during the speech, the president stated, "My dad, when I got elected vice president in 2008, he said, Joey, Uncle Frank fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He was not feeling very well now, not because of the Battle of the Bulge, but he said, and he won the Purple Heart, and he never received it. He never got it. Do you think you could help him get it? We will surprise him." He continued, claiming, "So I got him the Purple Heart. He had won it in the Battle of the Bulge. And I remember he came over to the house, and I came out, and my father said, present it to him, okay? We had the family there." Biden concluded the story saying he gave the medal to his uncle despite his Frank's humble protests. So his uncle wanted to decline the crown like Caesar, and Biden insisted. And a tear flew from his eye, and an eagle was soaring overhead, also crying. And Lady Liberty breathed a deep sigh as she witnessed the ultimate example of Americana. Why is it that Joe Biden constantly fucking lies, and he almost always drags daddy into it? It's almost like some weird psychological projection or something, like he doesn't feel like he measured up enough while his daddy was alive, and so now he's making up shit about all the times he made him proud or something. It's almost like that. Like, remember when he told the story a couple of years ago, and he was stumping around for gay rights that by then Joe Biden had never pushed for and had already been codified. By the way, he's a neo-lib with regards to these moral issues. And he said, well, one time I remember back, and it would have been the fucking 50s at that point, I was confused because I saw two men kissing in the road. And I looked to my father asking what was. And he said, well, they're in love, son. And so everything was fine. He realized that, men can be gay and make out with each other, and that's perfectly fine. And I'm thinking to myself, as the supposed working class hero style Delaware dwelling, Philadelphia dwelling, or Pittsburgh moron that he is, Scranton, actually, sorry, moron that he is, do you really genuinely think that his daddy, who I think was literally in World War I, so was ancient as the sands of time by the time Joe Biden was a goddamn senator, do you really think that he genuinely saw that and that's what he told Joe? Or is it bullshit? I think that it's bullshit. Now he's talking about giving a Purple Heart to his uncle. And as the piece also noted, Frank Biden's tombstone does not identify him as a Purple Heart honoree, nor does his obituary. How about you dig him up? How about you dig him up and see if there's such a Purple Heart pinned to his dead chest? It should still be there. It's probably, he ordered it from one of those catalogs that sells, the replica medals, and he just gave it to him, and the dude was demented, so he didn't know any better. That's probably the most likely explanation for the story, other than outright, objective, little black lying. I think that he just lied myself, though. He was trying to impress the veterans to drum up support. He does that on a regular basis. Dan DTM, hilarious, 9/11 was predicted in X-Files episode. More recently, an episode where a vaccine destroys everyone's immune systems. Interesting. Elon Zex, he homeschools, raises our kids right, and saved us from the shot, all because he was watching your channel. Thank you. We love you and your message. Well, excellent. I'm glad to have a positive impact on society. Now you just got to give him into making pickles. By the way, look up some curried pickle recipes. Lots and lots of spiciness. That's what you need for fucking winter. If he's a wild sort of dude, he'll love him. Just trust me. Just make those. Big truck. FBI and CIA are guilty of treason against the American people and will face justice by the same people they stabbed in their backs. We'll wait and see whether justice is actually imparted. Of course, the Republicans tend to be cucks, so them controlling the House may not lead to anything significant. We'll be hopeful, but we'll trust but verify. By the way, please don't send any more super chats because we're going up on 45 minutes here. Jim Morrison, 6.4 quake in North California. You nailed it. Maybe just a minor foreshock. Power down. Yeah, everyone's hoping that it's just a foreshock and a chunk of California goes cascading off into the Pacific Ocean. Maybe it'll float a little ways out. You'll have a new island. That'd be kind of cool. Virgil Walker. Morning, Sticks. How long before woke goes broke? I hate to see The Witcher and Lord of the Rings go down this route. I don't give a fuck. I just don't pay attention to anything that is woke. It's already beginning to go broke, but as it was succinctly pointed out the other day by Razor Fist, it's more like go broke, get woke. It's basically a way to salvage yourself when you've made a series of fucking fiscal mistakes. Civic Nationalism 1776. How much worse does it have to get for civil war to happen? Quite a bit worse. Most people still have food on the table and a roof over their heads. Trump's potential indictment causing a constitutional crisis does not bode well for us. That's the thing. I don't think that he'll be indicted. I think that the whole idea is not to indict, it's to hold it over his head during the primaries in hopes of antagonizing a primary struggle. If they'll astroturf someone in and they'll do everything for them, pull out all the stops to try to get him nominated. If they're not, then they can plausibly claim in the general, if Trump is denied the win, honk honk, well, the Republicans didn't get behind him. They're worried he would get into office and then be imprisoned. That's what they'll go with. Null hypothesis. The DOJ, FBI, and CIA are making book on all politicians in SCOTUS for blackmail. Nothing will change. Yeah, they definitely have files on anyone that's significant in the world. I'd be very, very surprised if any major content creator didn't have an FBI file, at least a sparse one. And then finally, this is just a funny one to end the stream. Ukraine blasts appeaser Henry Kissinger for urging peace negotiations. Yeah, Henry Kissinger, you'll know him as the author of the Madman Strategy, a la the Richard Nixon years. Henry Kissinger, the warmonger. Henry Kissinger, the nuke hawk. Henry Kissinger, hey, I might accidentally blow up the world, but if I'm successful, then everything will be hunky-dory. That Kissinger. Henry Kissinger is now labeled an appeaser by Ukraine and by Ukraine apologists. Can I please put something out here for people who are not, like myself, are not old enough to remember like the 70s, the Kissinger era of the Madman Strategy. Henry Kissinger is one of the biggest and most notorious figures within war hawking in all of U.S. history. If you've gotten to the point where you're considering a deal that he's proposing, an unofficial manner, of course, as appeasement, if you are calling Henry Kissinger an appeaser, like you're claiming he's not gung-ho enough for war or something, you have officially lost your fucking goddamn minds. You have no mind left. There's not one functioning neuron in your goddamn stupid cranium at that point. Henry Kissinger, an appeaser? Yeah, hey, Richard, get over here. I got a great idea. Richard Nixon goes over, oh, what is it? I've got a great idea. We're going to convince the Soviet Union that you are insane. We're going to, hear me out, Richard. I know it sounds crazy, but we're going to make you seem crazy. You're going to fly nuclear bombers, fully armed, right next to the Soviet border on sortie after sortie after sortie, keeping them busy, number one, and convincing them that you're off the chain, number two. We're going to bomb some people here and there, start a few proxy wars. We're going to antagonize China at the same time. This will really get their goat. They'll think that you've gone nuts and that you've got nothing to lose and that you don't care anymore, and so they won't do anything. We are extremely lucky that Henry Kissinger was right. His strategy was half a step from doomsday invitation, just to be clear. If you're calling Henry Kissinger, of all people in the world, you would be better off calling John McCain an appeaser. You'd be better off calling Dick Cheney an appeaser, fucking John Ashcroft or someone like that. You'd be better off calling General Mao an appeaser than somebody like Henry Kissinger. This man is one of the most notorious war figures in all of his goddamn century, in all of the 20th century. Zelensky and the Ukrainians are calling him an appeaser. Honk, honk. I think we've reached a peak diplomatic clown world with this one. And the funny thing is, and the worst thing too, if you look through this, you'll find that there are actually people, sadly enough, I know, these people, I feel sorry for them because I can't imagine that they're intelligent enough to hold a normal life. Like, how do they have a job? How do they walk? How do they type in the English language? I would think they'd be illiterate at that point. It's like, yeah, you'd be below the scale where you can even harvest turnips. Like, that used to be part of the guide for IQ. Like, I think 40 IQ, it's like, can be directed to harvest vegetables or something like that. You're below that level. You're like, it's like you've got the IQ of a swordfish or something like that. Maybe not even that high. And these people actually agree with this summation. Apparently, they know nothing about Henry Kissinger. They know so little about U.S. history and diplomacy and the Cold War that they actually take this seriously. Well, he does sound like an appeaser. How dare he suggest that the Ukrainians can join NATO, end the war, and be hunky-dory by simply ceding Crimea and Donbass, not even the full area that Russia controls? How dare he suggest that they option that possibility instead of, I don't know, reigning over several 100,000 more of their people dying in a war in which they feasibly probably can't fully win against the Russians, which inevitably ends in negotiations of one sort or another? How dare he do that? Henry Kissinger, yeah, he sounds like a hippie. Are they going to come out and like compare him to Willie Nelson or John Lennon or something next? Well, he's got the glasses, they're round. He's basically like a short-haired John Lennon. I would die laughing. You wouldn't see any more Stick, Sex, and Hammer, no more clanking, because I'd be dead on the floor from a massive heart attack laughing myself to death. I'd be like that crazy Greek philosopher several thousand years ago who supposedly laughed himself to death. It was probably brain tumor related. Obviously aware. Woke is subsidized. What happens when you subsidize something? Exactly. That's what happens in entertainment. Elon's ex. Yes, he is wild. I'm an Indian wife, and he just loves Indian food you try to cook. He has it good. Love you. Our family loves what you are doing. Indian food is good. I want to cook more Indian food. I know how to make my own paneer and things like that, so I'm advancing. Liz doesn't like it quite so much. Not as much on the heavy on the herbs and spices side. So yeah, I've got limited times when I can actually experiment with new Indian foods. The Grizzly, and on Ukraine, Russia, it looks like Belarus may get involved if Putin's fights are any indicator. Does the world just want nuclear war that badly? Well, Belarus, to be clear, is not exactly a developed massive military force, but it could make things dicey, that's for sure. That could be a problem. Anyway, I think I'm going to go offline now because I've got things to do. I thank you all, to the near 5,000 people that have watched the live stream. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. Keep in mind, I'll live stream tomorrow, similar time, a little bit before, a little bit after. It depends on when the baby decides to be asleep or be awake. That's basically my new schedule for the rest of, probably the rest of the decade. It works. That's about all. Peace out.